Hi everyone, it's Jason Dunn here from Laptop Thoughts and Apple Thoughts. This is a comparison video between the Apple iPad 2 and the Motorola Xoom. Now, if you've already watched my Xoom review video, you'll know that this product is actually, I'm going to be returning it. In fact, right after I shoot this video, I'm going to box it up and bring it back to Best Buy for a refund. I don't feel like this product is quite mature enough, but definitely check out my review video. Here's a link to that to learn more about what I think about the Android 3 tablet, the Xoom in particular. This video, the real purpose of this video is to just talk about some of the pros and cons of each tablet and what you get when you go either with the iPad 2 or with the Motorola Xoom. Now, I've had the Xoom for about a week and a half now, so I feel like I've gotten a good chance to become fairly experienced with it. I've only had the iPad 2 for a few days, but I feel like that's enough time to at least get some of the broad strokes. This isn't meant to be a hardcore feature-by-feature comparison. This is more like a casual kind of chat about what I've noticed using each of these devices over the past couple days. So let's start off with the really easy thing, which is the physical comparison between the two. So I will very gently put these on top of each other so we can see a physical comparison. Slightly awkward. Okay, there we go. So the iPad 2 is on top. It is, of course, thinner. The iPad 2 is 8.8 millimeters thin, depth, and the Xoom is 12.9. So the Xoom at its thickest point is a fair bit thicker. The nice thing about the Xoom, though, is that it tapers off. Like, it has this kind of nice curvature, which actually makes it really nice to hold. Now, the Xoom is the Wi-Fi version of the Xoom is 1.5 pounds. The 3G/4G version is a little bit heavier. I think it's about 1.6, 1.7 pounds. So the one on the bottom here is 1.5, and the one on top here is 1.33 pounds. Can you really notice a difference? A little bit. Frankly, it's not enough to matter. I think that when these tablets get under 1 pound, I think that's when they'll become a lot more comfortable to hold. But I think both of these tablets, you don't really feel like holding them, up at for long periods of time. I'll put it to you that way. Now, let's talk about battery life just for a brief second here. I haven't been able to come up with a really good battery life test for these tablets yet. I need to kind of work on that. But the iPad 2 on top here, it has a 25 watt-hour battery, and the Xoom on the bottom here has a 24 watt-hour battery. So they're actually very similar in terms of the hardware they have for the battery. What's not similar, of course, is they have completely different operating systems and completely different ways of dealing with power management. So let's talk about the screens here. So the iPad screen is a 4:3 aspect ratio, and it's a 1024 by 600 if memory serves. The Xoom, on the other hand, is a 16:10 aspect ratio, and it is 1280 by 720. So it has a much better resolution screen for watching, movies and anything that's widescreen, aspect ratio. Whereas the iPad really excels in looking at photos. Most photos are kind of a 4:3 or maybe a 3:2 aspect ratio, and so the iPad is great, really great for looking at photos. Now, I'm gonna power them both up here, and we'll be able to see something. Hopefully right away. I want to talk about the notifications. Okay. Oh, my iPad turned off here. So, as you can see here, this is what the notification system looks like on the iPad 2. It's just this big box in the middle of the screen, and that's basically it. You can't do anything with this box. There's nothing you can do. All you can do is unlock it, and it goes away, and then your notification's gone. You can't kind of look it up or see what was there. Of course, you can go into your calendar and look it up that way, but the notification system it's really crude. And when it comes to email notification, the best you have is just this little icon here that says I have 38 new emails, and that's basically it. So the iPad notification system is extremely crude and frankly not very impressive. I'm actually going to go in here and check or just change the auto lock function. There we go. Okay, now let's talk about the Xoom and what Android brings to the table here, because frankly, this is something that Android does really well. So when you first turn it on, you get the time, you get these little notifications. Oops, down here. Now, yeah, the notifications aren't clickable because it's locked, which is actually fun. So I'm just going to draw my really easy to use pattern right here. And boom. Now this is the Android home screen of the Zoom. If you've already watched my review video, I'm not going to go into details about all of this, but there's a couple really important things, to note here. When you first load this device, I'll see if I can get a little bit closer to the camera here without too much glare. When you first load up the device, you can see, your calendar. I can see my upcoming appointments. I can see emails that have come in. And then down here in the bottom corner, when I look at the notifications, I can just tap on it and I can see here that I got an email. I can tap here and I can see, a little test appointment. And I can tap here and see that I got a Gmail test. And then I can dismiss the reminders by just simply clicking on the X here. So words cannot express how much better this notification system is over what the iPad brings to the table. So if you're using your tablet as a productivity device and you're managing a lot of different appointments and multiple email accounts, Android has done Google has done such a great job with the notification system on here. There's really no contest between the two. Now, let's talk a little bit about applications. So I talked a little bit about this in my Android review, or sorry, the Zoom review specifically. One of the big differences between these two platforms right now, in my opinion, are the differences between the applications that are available. And I'll give you one example here. At least I think I can. Yeah. So if I fire up TweetDeck. Okay, so here's TweetDeck. Here's TweetDeck on the Zoom. Okay, basically, as you can tell, or maybe if I rotate it this way, it'll be a bit more obvious. This was designed for a phone, right? This whole UI was designed for a phone. Boy, I sure have a lot of Twitter messages that have come in here, or a lot of people on my stream. Where's the top? Okay, there's the top. So this overall UI, if you imagine I hit an Android phone with like a giant ray and the Android phone got bigger, this is pretty much what you would get, okay? It's not really optimized, for the screen size. Now, if I compare that with TweetDeck on the iPad, let me just fire it up here, you'll see a completely different experience. You'll see here that in landscape mode, I have multiple columns. Rather than spreading the tweet out. Oh, look at that! TweetDeck just crashed. Awesome, TweetDeck. You guys really need to work on this. You can see here that it spreads out the tweets among 3 columns. And now if I go into this mode, you can see a slightly different interface. You can see if I click up here and I want to do a new tweet, you can just tell that this is a really highly optimized user interface for the iPad, and that is one of the really big differences that I've noticed. Now I'll give you another example of an application that's different. If we look at where is it here? Oh, I'm going to go into my apps. I'm going to fire up Evernote. Okay, so if I look at Evernote on the Zoom, you can see here you have these big, wide, open spaces, okay? And I'm not even sure if Evernote, yeah, so there we go, so it rotates. Now again, if you imagine this on a smaller phone, all these things would be closer together and it wouldn't look so ridiculous, but right now, it just looks really goofy, okay? And if I go into here under all notes, you can see it's not optimized, okay? Now, if I look at Evernote on the iPad 2, you'll see a completely different user interface. You can see I have the way things are organized. I have these notes and these little piles, and you see it makes really good use of the screen real estate. So enough about that. I think you get the point. As Android matures, Android on the tablet, that is, like, the Honeycomb. As Honeycomb matures, as more developers get on board, as more Honeycomb tablets come into market, of course you're going to see developers up their game, and they're going to put a lot more effort into making sure that the apps are highly optimized for Android. But until that happens, I really have to give the nod to the iPad 2 in terms of the overall better application kind of experience. Now, I will say, one of the nice things about Android, let me see here if it'll pop over, switching between multiple apps, like if I want to pop over to the gallery here, I can. I just press down here and I pop back into Evernote. I press, I press here and I pop into my Wi-Fi settings. That is a really, really nice way of switching between apps. It's really fast, it's really quick. The iPad version is you double tap and then this thing comes up and then you kind of pop over to it. Now that's not bad, but honestly I prefer the Android version. It's just a little bit more straightforward. I will say that on the iPad, although it's kind of a ridiculous pain, when you want to close things, you can just kind of tap. Now, this is a really easy way to close things, but when you have like, 30 apps open, this becomes painfully stupid. Like, there's no way to basically just kill them all. Over on Android, there's actually no really easy way to kill one of these things. I thought for the longest time I was doing something wrong. I was like pressing and holding, and I was like trying to do these weird flick things, and I'm like, what's going on? Why can't I end these things? Well, it turns out in order to kill something, you have to go into the settings, and you have to go into oh man, I'm not even sure where it is here. Basically, you have to force quit. There we go, running services, and then you have a list of all these apps, and then you can force quit the app, but then it gives you, stopping it may cause the application to fail. You get some stability issues. So it's almost like Android is saying, you never need to close apps, but I've personally found that there's been sometimes when I actually really do want to close the app, and so I wish that there was an easier way to do it. Now, I know that there are application killers and task managers in the Android marketplace, but it's kind of ridiculous that you need to add a third-party piece of software in order to do that. So, enough about that. Let's talk about the cameras. I'm not going to do any demo here. I'll just kind of tell you what I've learned. The camera on the iPad 2 is a joke. It is pathetic. The rear camera is bad. The front camera is bad. It's just bad, okay? I don't know what Apple was thinking when they decided to add a camera into this device, but it's like they put their cross-eyed engineer on doing this job. They really did a bad job. Now, over here on the Zoom, the camera is actually pretty good. I've taken a couple snapshots with it, but I saw a really great comparison between these two cameras over on a certain website, and the Motorola Zoom camera was just light years ahead of the iPad 2 camera. The iPad 2 camera is so bad, I honestly wonder why Apple even did it, other than maybe they were bowing to public pressure because people wanted to be able to use FaceTime and a bunch of other stuff. So camera definitely goes to the Zoom. I mentioned battery life before. Like I said, I didn't do any hardcore battery life tests, but in my opinion, the battery life on both of these tablets is excellent. I mean, I use these things like for days and days. So I eat 10 hours for both of these things is a very reasonable estimate. And I think that both Google with Android and Apple, they've done excellent jobs with power management and keeping power management in check. So great between those two things. Now, I want to briefly just talk about the home screen, because that's another key difference. When you look at the iPad 2 home screen, there's really nothing there, okay? Let's rotate it around here. All you have are just a bunch of icons, other than maybe this thing down here telling you the mail, telling you how many new emails you have. There's really nothing at all useful. This is a really common criticism of iOS, is that these icons are kind of dumb. They don't do anything. They don't give you any information. Yeah, they're basically just kind of useless, Now, over here on Android, the home screen, of course, is radically different because you have this entire widget interface. You also have multiple home screens, so you can configure home screens to be sort of task specific. And I think that this is a huge advantage for Android. And I think that as Android continues to mature, as they add new widgets, as applications maybe get a bit smarter and can plug into the sort of widget interface, I think that Android will get a lot better. And so, hands down, this is a much more usable interface. When I turn this on, I can immediately start seeing what I'm doing, immediately start seeing where my emails are coming in, etc., etc. So, great job by Google on that. I want to talk just briefly about apps, or rather games. I've already talked a little bit about apps. When I fire up, I'm just going to fire up Angry Birds here just so you can kind of see it. I will turn down the volume. Gaming on Android, if you can find the game, I'll put it this way, if you can find the game, like if the developer has decided to release the game, then it's great. I mean, the screen resolution is fantastic. The screen quality is great. I have zero complaints about the screen quality on the Zoom. I would say it is highly comparable to the iPad. The iPad maybe slightly better in terms of reproducing photographic quality, but the screen on the Zoom is fantastic. It's really, really nice. And again, this wide aspect ratio, I think it gives games a really nice interface, because it sort of makes you feel like you're playing like an Xbox game on your high def TV, you know, whereas over on Apple you have that 4:3 aspect ratio, and it just doesn't feel quite as good. But the reality is, of course, over on the iPad you have a lot more games to choose from, and so right now, again, until Android releases developers for the Android platform release more games, I think that Android is going to be at a disadvantage, and the iPad has the advantage there. So I think I've covered off most of the main differences, or the way these two things stack up. I'm sure I've forgotten a bunch of stuff, but those are sort of the most important ones that kind of pop to the top of my head as I've been using each of these tablets. There's a lot of things that still kind of make me go, huh, about the iPad 2. For instance, there's a lot of apps that I'm surprised that there aren't iPad versions, you know, for the apps. Like, I'll give you an example. I go over here to my Royal Bank of Canada app here, and boom, like, this is their app, right? This is an iPhone or an iPod Touch app, and you do this stupid doubling up thing, and then you get these awful, like, it looks disgusting, like these horribly big pixels. So, you know, there are some things that have surprised me about being an iPad owner, that there are not more developers that have released iPad versions of their apps, but still, compared to Android, you have so many more options over on the iPad. And then, of course, there's some really fantastic applications for the iPad, like, you know, like Flipboard, right? So if you've never seen Flipboard before, you can actually flip through news and tweets, and it's just a really beautiful app. Now, I think that some of that stuff it will come to Android, but this Android as a whole, I just think needs to mature. It needs, you know, 6, maybe 12 months to really get some steam going, get the development going, and I think that once that happens, this will be a much more of a fair fight. But overall, I think that you can tell that Apple has had a year to kind of slowly evolve the iPad hardware and improve and kind of iterate, and you can tell that the Zoom is sort of like a V1 product, and Apple, of course, just simply has the advantage of time here. They've had the ability to evolve their product. So that has been an 18-minute long comparison between these two products. I hope you've enjoyed it. Feel free to ask me any questions. Please do remember that I'm going to be returning the Zoom, and so I'm actually not going to have it for comparison purposes, but I'm pretty sure I'm going to be keeping the iPad 2. Feel free to ask me any questions. Give the video a thumbs up, subscribe to our channel, and thank you so much for watching and supporting the videos that I do. Of course, check out the ads next to this video, because that's how you support the work that I do. Thanks a lot.